It is said that when the moon stands highest, the world forgets to breathe, and on that night, the air itself seemed to wait, thick with whispers, trembling with prophecy. The royal courtyard had never known such silence. The torches along the marble path burned low, their flames bowing and flickering as if in reverence. The moon, vast and silver, hovered over the kingdom's heart, its light falling like a benediction upon the gathered court. They came to witness a union, foretold in half-remembered songs, the Alpha King and his bride, veiled and hidden, chosen not by beauty, but by omen. No one had seen her face. No one dared to. She was said to have been born under a cursed eclipse, her presence veiled from birth, her name whispered only in prayer. But rumor is a wild creature, and the night was full of it. Some said she was plain, others that her face bore the mark of an old sin. But a few, the old, the wise, the ones who still remembered how the forest spoke to those who listened, claimed the truth was not shame. But power. And power, like the moon, was never to be stared at directly. The king stood at the altar, his posture steady, but his heartbeat unquiet. Beneath the gold and black of his ceremonial cloak, the wildness of his lineage stirred. His wolf, that sacred, restless echo of his blood, paced beneath his skin, its instincts thrumming. When she entered, the wind changed. The torches flared higher, their flames twisting toward her as though drawn by something unseen. Her steps were soft, her veil long and pale as snowfall. And though her face was hidden, the air bent around her in strange devotion, the way it bends around something holy. The moonlight followed her, not merely falling upon her, but recognizing her, and in that recognition, the night began to remember its own forgotten song. The deepening mystery, the bride and the wolf beneath her veil. The bride's breath came slow and even. Her fingers trembled slightly against the folds of her gown, not from fear, but from the weight of what stirred beneath her skin. For as the king watched her approach, his wolf rose higher, a restless ache that burned behind his ribs. It was not desire that moved it, nor suspicion. It was memory of something older than crowns and vows. Her scent reached him first, wild honey and storm water, threaded with the faintest trace of silver. His pulse faltered. The wolf inside him shuddered, unsure whether to bow or to howl. When she reached the altar, he looked down into the veil that hid her face. All he saw was the faint shimmer of moonlight caught in its folds, soft, sacred, almost breathing. The priest's voice broke through the hush. The words of union, ancient, binding, eternal, wove through the courtyard like prayer. But beneath that calm recitation, something else moved, the low hum of prophecy. The soft rhythm of her pulse beating in time with the moon's. The king tried to steady his breath. The wolf would not let him dot it pressed against the edge of his control. Its voice whispering through the hollow of his mind, "She is not what they think." He clenched his fists at his sides. The ceremony continued. The crowd held their silence, watching, waiting. And then, at the moment their hands met, her fingers gloved, his bare, the air shifted. The moonlight grew brighter, almost blinding. The crowd gasped as the flame of every torch dimmed, yielding to the silver light that poured down from above. The priest faltered. The king felt it first, a spark beneath his skin, a low hum that spread from his palm to his heart. It was not pain nor warmth, but awakening. He looked at her. The veil fluttered in the wind, and for an instant he saw them. Her eyes, molten, starlit, infinite eyes that knew him. Not as king, not as man, but as soul. The world seemed to tilt. The wolves in the far hills began to howl, their voices rising like a chorus of ancient memory. The bride flinched. The king froze, and in that stillness, he felt it, the truth that the ceremony was not a union, but a remembrance. They had met before. Long ago, beneath a sky that no longer existed, the fade into silence. The veil that remembered the priest's voice trembled through the last words of the vow. Unsure but bound by duty, when the final phrase fell into the night, what the moon joins. No shadow may divide. The wind rose in answer. The torches went out. For a heartbeat, all was darkness. Then the moon shone brighter than ever before, flooding the courtyard in silver light. The crowd gasped again as the bride's veil lifted, not by hand, but by the will of the night itself. It rose like a breath exhaled by the stars, revealing her face not to the court, not to the world, but to him. Her skin glowed faintly, touched by light not of this earth. Her lips parted in something like relief, like recognition. The king took a step forward, his voice breaking softly. "Who are you?" Her reply was barely sound, yet it seemed to echo everywhere, in the air, in the stone, in the chambers of his heart. "The one your wolf remembers." The moon flared. The veil caught fire, not flame, but light. It rose and dissolved, scattering into 1,000 motes that drifted upward, vanishing into the sky like souls released. The queen-to-be stood before him, her eyes no longer human. Within them swirled the glow of galaxies, the soft shimmer of creation's first breath. "Your Majesty," the priest stammered, but no one heard him. The court could only stare, trembling. As the light around her deepened, the Alpha reached for her, his hand unsteady, his heart bared. "You are." "The Luna," she whispered. "The first, the forgotten, returned through me." The air rippled. The ground beneath them hummed. Somewhere the distant wolves howled again, their song no longer mournful, but reverent. The king's wolf bent low within him, bowing to her power. But the man who loved her before names and crowns, stepped closer, his palm finding hers again. And when he did, the hum of the world softened into silence. The light that surrounded them did not blind this time. It embraced, it crowned. The king's voice trembled when he spoke. "Then let this vow be more than a throne's promise." Her eyes lifted to his, ageless and tender. "It already is." The moon shone over them, sealing the bond with its silver touch. And when the light faded, they stood not as strangers nor as king and queen, but as something older, two halves of a vow whispered before time began. It is said that from that night onward, the moon never shone the same. It carried a trace of gold within its silver glow, as though remembering the moment love met destiny and refused to part. No one in the court spoke of what they saw, for how does one speak of gods returning to their own legend? But the wolves remembered. Each full moon, they howled a song not of hunger, but of devotion, a sound that trembled through the forest and kissed the stars. Some hearts believe that the Alpha and his Luna still dance beneath that same moon, their shadows entwined in endless rhythm, their bond eternal and unseen. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps the veil was never to hide her at all, but to protect the world from remembering what love truly is, wild, sacred, and eternal. It is said the forest does not sleep. Even when the castle candles gutter out and silence folds across the corridors like silk, the trees still whisper, patient, remembering, waiting. That night, beneath a moon heavy with silver sorrow, the bride left her chamber without a sound. Her veil trailed behind her, pale as mist, brushing along the old stone floors as though reluctant to let her go. No one saw her pass through the gate. No guards stirred. It was as if the night itself opened its arms and welcomed her home. Beyond the castle walls, the air shifted, cool, wild, alive. The woods were older than the kingdom, older than the gods who once hunted through them. Each branch seemed to bow as she entered, each leaf trembling with recognition. Her bare feet sank into moss that pulsed faintly with warmth, like the heartbeat of something sacred slumbering beneath the soil. She walked without knowing where, guided by whispers that did not frighten her. They called her name, softly at first, then clearer, each syllable woven with devotion. But she had never told the forest her name. Still it spoke it. Still it remembered. The path wound deeper between trunks veiled in moonlight. The air smelled of rain and memory. The deeper she went, the more she felt it, a pull, ancient and magnetic, drawing her toward a place she had never seen yet somehow knew. the deepening mystery. When the forest bowed in the heart of the woods, the trees parted. A clearing opened, silver-lit and hushed as a temple. There, upon the mossed earth, stood a stone altar. Vines coiled lovingly around its edges, their blooms pale as frost. No hand had touched it in centuries, and yet it waited, uncrumbled, unbroken, breathing quiet power into the night. The bride's breath shivered. The hem of her gown brushed the altar's edge, and something inside the stone stirred, not a sound, but a feeling, deep and tender, like a sigh beneath her heart on an offering, perhaps. Or a curse. Or both. The moon slid higher, spilling its light through the canopy. Her veil shimmered, and for a fleeting heartbeat, she looked less human and more like a memory made flesh, something the gods once dreamed, but could not keep. It was then she felt him. The wind carried his scent before his footsteps, reached her, wild, dark, and familiar. The Alpha, her husband by name, her stranger by heart. His instincts had led him through the forest maze. Guided by something deeper than reason, the pull of the bond neither of them yet understood, he emerged from shadow, his form half caught between man and beast. The moon traced his profile, sharp, haunted, beautiful in the way danger often is. His chest rose and fell too quickly, torn between reverence and fear. "Why are you here?" He whispered, though he already knew. Her eyes lifted to his, luminous, searching. "Because it called me." He stepped closer, but the air between them thickened with power. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stilled, listening. When their gazes locked, something ancient unfurled, the forest bent its branches low. The moss shimmered like starlit water, and the altar began to glow. Her pulse thrummed with a rhythm older than life. The Alpha's knees weakened. In her, he saw not the timid bride he had wed beneath mortal vows, but the awakening of something celestial. The veil that had once concealed her face had never been meant to hide flaw, it had been meant to protect. Divinity, her blood remembered. It was the blood of the first Luna, the goddess who once ruled beside the moon's chosen Alpha. When wolves were God's own keepers, when love itself could command the stars. Now, that bloodline pulsed anew. He could feel it, a pulse echoing through the bond that tethered them, burning hotter, truer, inevitable. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, wanting to kneel, wanting to howl, wanting to claim and worship all at once, but devotion warred with dread. For prophecy had warned him, when the blood of the Luna awakens, kingdoms fall and hearts are tested by moonlight. Still, he could not look away. She stood before the altar, haloed in light, her bare feet upon sacred earth, her gaze soft and knowing. "You feared me," she said quietly. "Not because I was plain, but because I was meant." His throat tightened. "I feared losing myself." "Then perhaps," she whispered, "you were meant to." The forest trembled as if the words themselves had weight. Somewhere far away, a wolf howled, one voice and then many, rising like a chorus of souls remembering their queen. The Alpha sank to one knee, not from duty but from awe. The bond between them thrummed like a living thread, luminous and aching. He saw in her the promise of ruin and salvation both. Her divinity did not separate her from him. It called him home. See the fade into silence. When the night knelt, the altar's glow softened to silver embers. The air thickened with stillness. Every leaf shimmered in reverent quiet. Every root hummed a lullaby of remembrance. The bride knelt too, lowering her veil until it touched the moss. Her hand brushed the Alpha's, light as a sigh. Between them, the world slowed. It was said that when two fated souls met in the heart of prophecy, time itself listened. The moon hung suspended, watching. The forest bent lower, its shadows gathering like gentle witnesses. "You were never meant to find me in the court of men," she murmured. "Only here where vows were born and broken before God's remembered mercy." He looked up at her, eyes gleaming with both hunger and reverence. "Then what happens now?" She smiled faintly. "Now the force decides." The vines around the altar stirred. The blooms unfurled, glowing with pale fire. Their scent was of rain and moonlight, of endings that promise beginnings. The bride's veil fluttered, and for a moment, the Alpha thought he saw wings, not of feathers, but of light. She leaned close, her breath brushing his ear like a prayer. When you wake, you will remember only this, that the forest bowed and the night knelt, because love returned to where it began. He tried to speak, but the words dissolved on his tongue. The world around them dimmed, the stars sinking lower. The air thick with the sound of their shared heartbeat. The moonlight folded around them like a curtain, and the forest exhaled. It is said that long after they were gone, the clearing remained. The moss stayed warm beneath the altar, and sometimes, when the moon was fullest, two shadows could still be seen kneeling there. Hand in hand, their vows echoing through the hush. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps the forest only sleeps when it dreams of them. And beneath that dreaming hush, the night still remembers the bride who walked beyond the walls, and the Alpha who followed, until even the gods bowed to their silence. It is said that mirrors remember what eyes forget, that they hold within their silver depths not just reflections, but memories all the selves one has ever been. And so, on a night wrapped in hush and ghostlight, the new queen woke. The chamber was still, save for the faint rustle of her breath against the silken air. Curtains drifted in the moonlight's tide. Pale and weightless, and somewhere beyond the window, a lone wolf cried, a note so distant, so sorrowful. It seemed to rise from the marrow of the earth. Her heart stirred in answer. Once, twice, then faster, until the rhythm no longer sounded like a pulse, but like a call, ancient, aching, uncontainable. The sound filled her, spilling into her veins, swelling into something that was not quite a cry, not quite a song. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. Beneath her skin, something vast and wild turned over in its sleep. The moonlight fell across her like revelation. Each beam was cold as truth, sharp, clean, merciless, and when it touched her bare shoulder, her skin shimmered. It burned not from pain, but recognition. Her eyes lifted toward the window, and there, framed in the lattice of shadows and light, hung the full moon, immense and alive. It watched her the way a god might watch its forgotten child. Something inside her whispered, "Wake up, Dot." She turned toward the great mirror that faced her bed. It stood tall as a doorway, its frame carved with wolves and roses entwined. The reflection it held was soft at first, a queen draped in midnight silk, her hair a dark river down her back. Her eyes caught between gold and sorrow, but then the image rippled. For one heartbeat she saw herself and then another self beneath, layered like memory beneath skin. Her reflection flickered, split, shimmered, half woman, half shadow, half something older. Her lips parted in a soundless gasp as the edges of her form blurred, her eyes deepening into something feral and eternal. The howl rose again, closer now. Not from beyond the forest, but within her beat the deepening mystery. The memory beneath the blood some hearts believed the first wolves were not born, but remembered, fragments of divinity given shape by a longing Dot as the queen stood before her mirror. She felt that truth unfurl within her bones. The chamber grew dim, the moonlight thickening until it seemed to breathe. Her heartbeat was no longer hers alone. It was their rhythm, the ancient call that bound every Alpha and Luna through time and far across the castle. He heard it too. The Alpha woke from a restless dream, his senses sharpening, his own heart trembling in sync with hers. The scent of her reached him, wild, metallic, holy. He rose without thought, without command, his feet moving as if the moon itself led him. The corridors between them were long, lined with torches that hissed as he passed. Shadows stretched and curved, bending toward him as though in reverence. When he reached her chamber, the air was alive with power. He stopped at the threshold, breath caught, body trembling. Through the open door, he saw her. The queen stood in moonlight like a creature reborn. Her hair lifted in the windless air, her skin shimmered with shifting runes of light. Her eyes glowed faintly, not gold, not silver, but the color of a storm caught between dusk and dawn. He took a step forward. then faltered, Dot it was not fear that stopped him, but awe, for he understood as all Alphas did. The ancient stories whispered beneath the bloodline. The tale of the first Luna, who loved not as a woman but as a goddess, whose howl once split the sky and taught the moon how to shine. Dot, and now, in the queen's trembling form, he felt her return. Luna, he breathed. Though the name was both hers and another's, her eyes met his in the mirror. I remember, she whispered, voice fragile as wind over glass. He reached for her slowly. Reverently, his hand hovering near her shoulder, trembling not from fear, but from the enormity of what stirred between them. The bond that had always been silent now thrummed, a low hum beneath their skins. It was not the pulse of magic, but of memory, the echo of every vow ever made beneath the moon. She turned to face him. Her reflection stayed a heartbeat behind, lagging like the memory of a ghost. When she smiled, it was both her smile and the smile of something divine. I thought it was a curse, she murmured. He shook his head. No, it's the world remembering through you. Outside, the wolves had gathered at the forest's edge. Their eyes gleamed like lanterns. Their bodies poised in silence, waiting, listening. Dot, and then the sound came. The sound that would mark the end of forgetting. The queen's lips parted, and from her throat rose a howl. Not of agony, but revelation. It was the sound of recognition, of blood finding its origin, of love awakening after centuries of sleep. The Alpha bowed his head as it filled the room, trembling under its sacred weight. The mirrors shook, but did not shatter. They shimmered instead, showing not a chamber, but endless moonlit fields where wolves once danced with gods. She was not changing. She was remembering. See. The fade into silence, the night that knelt when the howl faded. The silence it left behind was deeper than any sound. The queen stood in its stillness, breathing slowly, her eyes damp with moonlight. The Alpha stepped closer until the space between them was only breath. His hand found hers, warm, trembling, alive. The bond that had slept for generations awoke between their palms, threading through them like light through glass. Do you feel it? She whispered. He nodded. It was always there. The mirrors around them softened, their reflections melting into mist. The chamber no longer seemed made of walls and stone, but of air and memory. The moon's light shifted, bending into patterns on their skin, sigils of the old vow, the one made before kingdoms, before crowns, when love was the only law. He cupped her face with reverent fingers. You were never mine to claim, he murmured. You were the world's gift, returned. She leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering closed. And still I chose you. Outside, the wolves lifted their heads again, howling as one, not to mourn, but to bless. Their voices rose in harmony with the heartbeat of the forest, with the whisper of rivers and stars. In that moment, the Alpha and his queen stood not as rulers, but as echoes of a love the world had once known, eternal, forbidden and achingly true. The moon bowed behind a veil of cloud, as if to hide its tears. The light dimmed. The mirrors dulled, and when all was still again, they remained, two shadows in silver silence, hands entwined, hearts steady. It is said that from that night onward, the moon no longer rose alone. For in its light one could sometimes see her, the queen who remembered, the Luna reborn, standing beside the Alpha beneath the stars. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps the howl was never just a sound, but a promise, a reminder that even after centuries of silence, love still finds its way through the blood and the dark, and waits, patient and eternal, beneath the moonlit glass of every soul. It is said that some hearts are not made for time. They burn too brightly, too briefly, leaving eternity to cradle their ashes. The night the silver first appeared in her veins, the air turned strange. The stars dimmed as if to listen. Even the forest, restless, ancient, wild, stilled its breath. In the queen's chamber, moonlight spilled across her skin like silk and sorrow intertwined. She sat before the window, her eyes half-lidded, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the faint glimmer tracing beneath her wrist. A thin line of silver pulsed there, luminous and alive, the moon's mark, or perhaps its mercy. Each heartbeat sent that glow rippling higher, weaving through her like threads of living light. The room filled with its reflection, on the mirrors, on the pale fabric of her gown, on the tears she did not yet know she was shedding. The Alpha watched from the doorway. He did not speak. He dared not break the spell that held her, the quiet between them deep and trembling as devotion. Outside, the moon hung low and frail, wrapped in mist. It seemed to look back at her not as a celestial body, but as a mother grieving her child. She turned toward him then, her voice soft enough to belong to a dream. "It has begun," she whispered Dot, and in that single breath, he heard prophecy stir, be. The deepening mystery, the moon's punishment whispers, tell us that the moon never forgives what it once loved. And long ago, it loved the wolves, too deeply, too fiercely. When they turned their howls toward other gods, it cursed them with memory, to forever crave what they could never keep. Now, as the silver grew in her veins, the elders spoke in trembling tones. They said she bore the moon's punishment, bore not to rule, but to awaken the Alpha's true form, to summon the ancient power that had slumbered since the age of first light, but at a cost. Always at a cost. Each night, her glow brightened, her pulse softer yet more radiant. And each dawn, her breath came fainter. The Alpha could feel her slipping, not in distance, but in essence. It was as if she were being unmade by the same light that made her divine. He saw counsel in secret places, the forbidden archives beneath the chapel, the hidden codices buried in ash, the scrolls no mortal hand was meant to touch Dot by candlelight. He read by shaking hands. When the luna's blood runs silver, the Alpha's shadow shall awaken. One will rise, one will fade. The words struck him like cold fire. He crushed the page, trembling. To save her was to unmake the balance, to defy the moon itself. Yet love is a kind of defiance, quiet and absolute. He returned to her chamber each night, carrying hope like a wound. She would smile when he entered, her eyes reflecting him with the patience of stars. "I know what you seek," she murmured once, her fingers brushing his cheek. Her touch was cooler now, light as moon mist. But some fates are not meant to be undone. "I cannot lose you," he said, the words raw with the ache of centuries. "You cannot," she agreed gently, "for you have already found me." That is all love ever asks. The wind stirred then, rattling the glass. Her silver light flickered across his chest, where his heart beat like a captive thing. For a moment it seemed to slow, aligning with hers, his life folding into her fading rhythm. He understood then, their bond was not breaking. It was completing. See, the fade into silence. The silver vow the night of the waning moon arrived, quiet and immense. The sky was a shroud of pale silk, the forest breathing in steady prayer. The queen's strength had almost gone. Her glow filled the chamber like mist. She stood by the balcony, her veil drifting in the soft wind. When the Alpha entered, her light reached for him first, brushing his shadow, turning it silver. He went to her without armor, without crown. Only a man before the woman who had become his curse and his salvation. "It's time," she whispered. Her voice was steady, though her body swayed like candle flame. He caught her hands. "No," he breathed. "Not this way." She smiled faintly, her lashes glistening. "It was always this way. I was never meant to live beyond the awakening. My life was the door, and you, the one waiting on the other side." The moon rose, veiled and pale. Its light pressed through the window, finding her face, her hair, her trembling lips. She turned toward it, tears glinting like molten stars. "I am not dying," she said softly. "I am remembering what I was made from." He gathered her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Then let me remember too." The air thickened. The silver within her veins flared, flowing into his skin where they touched. He gasped, the sensation not pain, but awakening. Something vast and ancient stirred inside him, a power older than speech, older than kings. She kissed him then, slow and eternal. And the moon seemed to stop its descent to watch. Her tears fell between them, cool and luminous. When they touched his cheek, they did not vanish. They turned to silver, tracing thin marks down his skin, symbols of a bond unbreakable by death or God. And when she finally drew her last breath, it was into his mouth like a vow. Her body grew still. Yet her light did not fade. It lingered, soft, suspended, until it became part of the air itself, shimmering faintly like memory caught in the act of breathing. He sank to his knees, her hands still in his, her light still within him. Outside, the wolves began to howl, not in mourning, but in reverence. Their voices rose together, weaving through the forest, through the castle stones, through the veil of the heavens. It is said that the Alpha did not weep, that his tears had already turned to silver, sealing the bond between them forever. That from that night onward, his heart bore a mark that glowed faintly beneath the skin, a constant ache, a silent flame. He carried her memory as others carry faith. Every dusk he would stand beneath the moon, and for a moment it would wane and brighten, as if answering his unspoken prayer. Some nights, those who wandered too far into the forest swore they heard a soft voice in the wind, saying, "Do not grieve the light that leaves you. It only returns where it belongs." And when the moon was lowest, it gleamed not white, but silver, like the thread that still bound their souls. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps love is only ever tested by time, not undone by it. For some vows, once whispered beneath the moon, do not end with silence. They live on as the light between breaths, as the silver between two hearts, as the soft hum of eternity where longing hides. It is said that dreams are not merely wanderings of the mind, but paths the soul takes to remember what the heart has forgotten. And on that night, beneath the quiet hush of the full moon, the Alpha dreamed. He found himself standing beneath a sky painted in red and silver, the color of prophecy, of blood, of devotion eternal. Around him stretched a vast plain of wild grass, swaying like whispers. The air trembled with the low thrum of 1,000 heartbeats, all belonging to the same rhythm, one pack, one vow, one love older than stars. And she was there, running barefoot across the crimson fields, her hair streaming behind her like smoke from sacred fire. Her laughter was wind. Her eyes were moons. When she turned to look at him, he felt his name dissolve, his body blur. His soul recognized its other half. They ran together, two shadows in perfect harmony, their feet barely touching the earth. The world bent around their union, every star a witness, every howl an oath. In that place, there was no time, no death, no distance, only the echo of their shared pulse. He felt it then, the bond, raw and radiant, stretching beyond life itself. Their souls were one howl, one heartbeat, one promise whispered before gods learned to speak. But even as he reached for her, the red sky began to pale. The ground trembled, and the sound of breaking vows filled the air. Her image flickered, one moment radiant, the next dissolving into silver mist. "Find me," she whispered, her voice both near and infinite, "even when I am forgotten." And then the world fell away. The Alpha AWOKEB, the deepening mystery. The murals beneath the moon, the night still held its breath. He lay in bed, heart pounding like thunder caught beneath ribs. The dream lingered, not as a story, but as a memory returning through layers of silence. Beside him, she slept. The queen, the Luna, her face soft in the dim glow, her lips parted in fragile peace. And there, upon her skin, shimmered something faint, a glow, pale and living. Like the reflection of the moon through water. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers trembled as they touched that light. It pulsed once beneath his fingertips, familiar, tender, eternal. The same pulse from the dream. The same heartbeat. Something inside him stirred, not merely emotion, but remembrance. A pull, ancient and magnetic, guiding him beyond the walls of sleep. He rose, drawn by the invisible thread of fate that now hummed between them. The moonlight followed him through the corridors, silvering his path, down stairwells and into the forgotten parts of the castle where dust slept and silence ruled. There, hidden beneath stone and time, he found a door, ironbound, half buried in ivy. It groaned open at his touch, exhaling the scent of age and secrets. Beyond it lay a crypt. The air was cool and heavy with reverence. Torches slept cold in their sconces, yet faint light bloomed from somewhere unseen. As he stepped inside, he saw the walls alive with painted stories, vast murals stretching from floor to ceiling. Each one a piece of memory preserved in pigment and myth. He moved closer. There, in the first mural, 2 figures stood beneath a red sky, a man and a woman, their faces both strange and achingly familiar. In another, they were wolves, side by side, howling toward a moon that wept silver tears. The next showed them crowned, king and queen, lovers and enemies. Their hands clasped across centuries' dot, and beneath it all, written in faded script, a prophecy. When the moon forgets their names, love shall sleep in mortal skin. They shall wander and be reborn until memory returns through dream and blood. The Alpha's breath caught. His hand lifted, tracing the woman's painted cheek, her eyes, her lips, her light. The same light that now glowed upon his mate's sleeping skin, thought it was her. It had always been HERC, the fade into silence, the dream that woke, the silence deepened. Dust swirled like ghosts in the pale gleam of the moon, filtering through the cracks. Above, he felt her before he heard her. Her presence brushed his soul first, the soft hum of something sacred moving through the air. Then the whisper of her voice, delicate as the hush between heartbeats. You found it. He turned. She stood in the doorway, veiled in moonlight. Her eyes gleamed with centuries. Sorrow, wonder, recognition. The glow beneath her skin had grown stronger, soft and ethereal, casting faint halos in the dim crypt. I thought it was a dream, he said, his voice barely sound. It was, she answered. But some dreams are doors. You walk through one. He stepped toward her, the weight of lifetimes between them collapsing with each breath. How long have we been forgetting? Her gaze fell upon the murals. Long enough for the world to rebuild itself over our story. Long enough for gods to call it legend. And now? Now, she whispered, the memory has returned. She approached the mural, her fingers brushing over her painted likeness. The wall shimmered beneath her touch, as though the stone itself remembered the warmth of her. He watched her, every part of him aching with recognition, not the shock of new love, but the gravity of finding something lost and sacred. I saw you, he said, running beneath the blood-red sky. Her lips curved into a soft, distant smile. And I saw you waiting in the place between sleep and waking. He reached for her hand. When their fingers met, the world seemed to hold its breath. The air trembled, and a faint hum rose from the stone around them. The resonance of memory completing itself, light unfurled from their joined hands, spiraling gently upward, illuminating every mural at once. In that glow, the painted figures seemed to move, running, loving, dying, returning, the same 2 souls woven through ages. Bound by a vow no curse could unmake, the queen's voice broke the hush, softer than moonlight. It was never just fate, was it? He shook his head. No, it was devotion. Even gods can forget, but love remembers. She turned to him, her eyes gleaming wet with the reflection of centuries. Then let it remember us again. He gathered her close, the crypt fading into blur around them. Their foreheads met, breaths mingling, hearts echoing the same ancient rhythm. For a moment, it was as if time had no meaning, as if every lifetime, every loss, every vow ever whispered beneath 1,000 moons had folded into this one embrace. The murals glowed brighter, then slowly dimmed, their light settling into quiet. They stood there in silence, 2 figures in the half-dark, the weight of countless yesterdays dissolving into peace. Outside, dawn began to rise. The Alpha lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to the silver pulse beneath her skin. She smiled faintly, eyes fluttering closed. "Sleep," he whispered, though she was not tired. "Let the world remember for us." And as the first light touched the crypt's threshold, they vanished into shadow, not as rulers, not as mortals, but as the memory itself. It is said that when the wind passes through that hidden chamber, it hums with 2 heartbeats, that the murals sometimes shimmer, even in darkness, that those who dream beneath a blood-red moon may wake with a whisper in their chest, a voice saying, "Find me, even when I am forgotten." Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps the dream was never just a dream, but the soul's way of keeping love alive beneath the silence, beyond the centuries where longing hides and remembers. It is said that on certain nights, the moon forgets her gentleness. She sheds her silver grace and burns instead, crimson, and alive, as if remembering a love that once defied the heavens. That night was such a night. The castle slept uneasily beneath the weight of that strange light. Its towers gleamed red as bloodstone. Its windows caught fire with reflection. Shadows pooled in corners where prayers could not reach. Servants whispered of omens. Nobles clutched their charms. Somewhere in the distance, the wolves began to howl, low, trembling. Reverent but in the highest chamber, the queen stood alone by her mirror. The scarlet moon touched her face, tracing her skin in shades of light and longing. Her eyes shone softly, not frightened, but calm, ancient, knowing. She did not flinch when the light bled deeper, or when her reflection shifted, revealing faint ripples of power beneath her skin. The glow beneath her veins stirred, not silver now, but rose gold, pulsing in rhythm with something vast and unseen. Outside, the court gathered in murmuring dread. The red sky had never come without reason. Prophecy spoke of it, the burning moon that would choose, the night when mortal and divine would meet. And so, when the bells tolled midnight, the queen lifted her veil, straightened her crown, and walked to the balcony. She did not wait for permission. She was no longer a woman who needed ITB the deepening. Mystery, the moon's confession, the balcony open to the world washed in crimson. The air shimmered faintly, as though thick with the breath of gods. The forest bowed beneath the wind. The rivers caught the red light and carried it, serpents of liquid fire. The court followed her, a hesitant tide of silks and murmurs. Faces pale, eyes wide, hearts thrumming with fear disguised, as reverence. And then he came, the Alpha. He stepped into the glow beside her, his presence grounding the trembling world. His dark hair caught the red gleam. His eyes reflected the same fierce devotion that burned in the sky. For a moment, they stood in silence, queen and mate, mortal and beast, both bathed in the same unholy beauty. The crowd watched as the moon deepened, dripping its color like tears of light. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady, a melody woven through silence. "Do you know?" she said, eyes lifted toward the bleeding sky. "Why the moon weeps red once every 1,000 years?" No one answered. Even the wind seemed to bow its head. She turned slightly, her gaze finding his, the Alpha who had walked beside her through curse, through prophecy, through dream. "Because once," she whispered, "the moon loved a wolf." A murmur rippled through the court, fragile as candle flame. "They say she watched him from the heavens," the queen continued, "until longing became unbearable. She descended, cloaking herself in mortal skin, and for one brief lifetime, she loved him as woman to man." Her eyes softened, remembering what she herself had never lived, yet somehow always known. But love between God and wolf was forbidden. When the heavens discovered it, she was torn from him. Her light dimmed, her name cursed. Yet she left a fragment of her essence behind, within him, within the blood of the first Alpha. The crowd trembled. Even the guards lowered their spears. "And so," the queen said, her voice carrying like moonlight over still water, "that blood lives still. In me." Her words fell like petals upon still air. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The world itself seemed to pause, caught between awe and disbelief. The Alpha's breath hitched, Not from shock, but from recognition. In her glow, in her every heartbeat, he had always sensed something beyond mortal bounds, something sacred, familiar, inevitable. She turned toward him fully now, her gown whispering against the marble, her eyes twin moons in the red haze. You once asked why the forest bowed when we met, why the stars dimmed when I spoke your name. Her voice broke softly. It is because the moon remembers him, and through me, she remembers you. See, the fade into silence, the crimson vow that Alpha lowered his gaze. His heart, fierce and proud, softened into reverence. He bowed his head, not as a king before a queen, but as a mortal before divinity. The kingdom, he said quietly, was never mine, was it? Her smile was tender, not triumphant. It was always ours. The mortal to guard, the divine to guide. One cannot reign without the other. The moon burned brighter. The color deepened until it filled the sky with molten gold-red light. The world beneath it seemed to hum with awakening. The wind stilled. The wolves in the forest fell silent. Their howls replaced by quiet awe. Then let the vow be renewed, she whispered. He stepped closer, the space between them folding into eternity. The crimson glow touched their skin, painting them in shared flame. When he took her hand, it was not merely touch, it was recognition across time. The pulse between them synchronized, the rhythm of 1,000 forgotten lifetimes aligning once more. Her voice, low and steady, rose like prayer. I am the moon's blood, the forgotten promise. His reply came like a vow beneath breath. And I am her shadow, bound by the call that remembers. They raised their joined hands toward the burning sky. The moon's light surged, spilling over the balcony, flooding the court in waves of red and silver dot. It was neither heat nor pain, only memory. The memory of creation, of the first vow whispered before the stars learned to shine. The heavens trembled. The air shimmered. For an instant, it seemed the moon bent closer, its face alight with tears, crimson, luminous, divine dot. When their lips met, the light burst outward like a sigh of completion. The castle stones glowed. The forest shivered with reverent life. And every heart that watched felt something ancient stir within, a reminder that love, at its truest, is the bridge between mortal and divine. The glow began to fade. Slowly, gently, like candlelight surrendering to dawn. When it was gone, only pale moonlight remained, soft and silver once more. The sky, calm and endless, reflected peace. The queen leaned against him, her strength steady but serene, her crown glinting faintly. He brushed a hand over her hair. The curse is ended, he murmured. She looked up at him, her smile quiet and infinite. No, it has only become something new. Below them, the kingdom breathed again. The courts sank to their knees, not in fear, but in awe. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, a wolf began to howl, not of sorrow this time, but devotion. The sound rose into the night, winding through stars and silence alike, until it reached the moon, and the moon, still flushed with red memory, seemed to answer. It is said that from that night onward, the moon carried a faint hue of crimson whenever it shone over their land, a promise written across eternity. Not of omen, but of remembrance, for some vows are too sacred to fade. Some loves burn quietly across lifetimes, not to consume, but to illuminate. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps the moon still weeps, not from sorrow, but from devotion, a celestial whisper to the world below. I loved, and I remember. It is said that when the moon turns pale and the wind forgets its song, the wolves begin to lose their way. And that night, the forest cried softly with them. A strange illness had begun to spread, not through flesh, but through spirit. The wolves no longer sang to the moon. They howled against it, eyes clouded with madness, their hearts thrashing between hunger and despair. Once loyal guardians turned restless, as though something sacred within them had been unbound. The Alpha felt it first, the trembling in the bond that tied him to his pack. Every heartbeat pulsed with the ache of his people's fear. In the echo of every howl, he heard loss, but the queen heard something deeper. She felt it as silence, spreading like frost through the soul of the forest. The bond that connected all living things, the ancient, invisible thread that sang between her heart and theirs, had begun to fray, and so, beneath a cold and dying moon, she walked barefoot into the great hall of marble and glass. Her veil trailing behind her like a river of night out there, she knelt upon the floor. The candles bowed in her presence. Her tears fell freely, bright, trembling, divine. When they touched the marble, they shimmered and did not fade. Instead, they spread outward, forming delicate rivers of light that wound through the chamber. Like veins of starlight running toward the horizon, the Alpha found her there. He entered in silence. Every step a prayer, he did not know how to speak. The sight of her, the queen bowed before the moonlight. Her tears forming constellations on the floor, stole his breath. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hand finding hers. "My Luna," he whispered, voice rough with devotion. "Your heart cannot bear this alone." She looked up, eyes luminous with unshed grief. "I was born to bear it," she said softly. "The sickness is not of the body, but of memory. The wolves have forgotten their song. I must remind them. The deepening mystery, the stars that answered outside, the night deepened, thick and endless, heavy with the hum of something unseen. The moon, veiled by thin clouds, cast light like silver smoke. The queen rose, her gown whispering over the stone. She moved to the balcony where the cold air met her skin, where the sky stretched open like a wound of beauty and sorrow. Her hands lifted toward the heavens. "Mother of moons," she whispered, voice trembling through the air. "I was born from your breath, and I return to you now. Hear me, the wild has turned against itself. Guide me, let my heart remember the song that made us whole." Her tears fell again, glowing faintly as they touched the stone. And then, something answered. The stars stirred. It began as a shimmer, faint and far away, as though the sky itself had inhaled. Then light began to fall, slow, deliberate, graceful. Not like meteors, but like spirits descending in silence. Each star drifted closer until the night seemed alive with them, luminous souls surrounding her, their light weaving through the air like whispers made visible. The Alpha could not breathe. His heart pounded with reverence. One of the lights came to rest before the queen, hovering above her open palm. When it spoke, its voice was not sound, but feeling, a pulse within the chest. Clear and certain. Her heart is the cure. The queen's lips parted, trembling. She turned to him, her eyes soft as twilight. "Do you hear it?" she asked. He nodded. "I do." "But what does it mean?" Her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the forest lay dark and waiting. "It means," she said, "I must give myself back to the sky." He caught her hand. "No," he breathed. "Not again. Every vow, every prophecy, must it always ask for your life?" She smiled, faint and weary. "This is not an ending, my Alpha. This is remembrance. If I am what binds the pact to the moon, then I must return to where the bond was born." The stars pulsed brighter, their light washing over the balcony like a tide. He wanted to protest, to beg the heavens for mercy, but when she looked at him, he understood. Some love was not meant to be kept in flesh. Some devotion was meant to become eternal. "Then let me walk with you," he whispered. Her eyes shimmered. "You always were." See, the fade into silence. The night they became starlight, the wind rose, soft and mournful. The river of light upon the marble floor began to move, flowing outward, through the arches and over the steps, winding toward the forest. It pulsed with the rhythm of her heart. The queen stepped forward, her bare feet leaving trails of luminescence with each step. The Alpha followed her, his shadow dissolving into the glow. Together, they walked through the moonlit corridors out into the open night. The wolves watched from the edge of the trees, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling between reverence and fear. The sickness within them stirred, restless, uncertain. When she reached the clearing, the queen stopped. The stars gathered above, circling in slow, silent devotion. The light touched her face, her hands, her heart, Do you trust me? She asked softly. The Alpha's voice was low and breaking. Beyond life, beyond death. She smiled, not with sorrow, but peace. Then watch. Her hands rose once more. The rivers of light that had followed her began to lift, threads of silver unraveling upward, merging with the heavens. Her gown fluttered like the wing of a great bird. Her hair shimmered, catching the red of the moon, the white of the stars, the faint gold of dawn not yet born. The wolves began to whine, low, aching, reverent. Her pulse slowed, then merged with the hum of the world. Every star pulsed once in answer. The sickness in the wolves' hearts eased. The madness softened into quiet. When her light began to fade, he reached for her, but instead of flesh, his hand met warmth and radiance, the echo of her heartbeat. It pulsed once beneath his palm. Do not grieve, her voice whispered, distant and near all at once. Where the stars burn, there I remain. When they shine upon your skin, know that I am home. The Alpha bowed his head. Then let me find you in the sky. He stepped into the circle of light, letting it wrap around him like a vow. The stars trembled, descending one final time, their glow enveloping both of them dot, and then silence. When the light faded, the clearing was empty. The forest stood still. Above, the stars burned brighter than they ever had. Two new ones glimmered among them, side by side, soft and steady. Their light woven together so completely they could not be told apart. The wolves lifted their heads. Their howls rose, no longer wild, no longer broken, but harmonious and whole. The sickness was gone. The bond restored, it is said that from that night onward, the stars watched over the forest more closely than before. When the moon was full, two of them always shone brightest, one gold, one pale silver, and their light never flickered. Some hearts believe they were not lost, only transformed. That the Alpha and his queen guard their pack still, whispering through the leaves, weaving peace into the night air, and sometimes, when the wind moves softly through the trees, one might hear it, a faint echo of devotion lingering in the hush. Two hearts, one vow. Two souls, one sky. Perhaps their hearts were never meant to part. Perhaps love only ever changes shape, from breath to light, from flesh to forever. Beneath the silence, where longing hides, they still shine. It is said that even the wildest hearts must one day kneel before what they love. And so it was, on a night when the heavens were not gentle, the storm had been building for days, a slow, heavy weeping from the gods. The castle walls shuddered with thunder. Lightning carved pale veins across the sky. Rain poured through the courtyards in silver sheets, turning the earth to mirror, but she did not hide from it. The queen walked into the tempest as though it were her chapel. Her gown soaked, her hair undone, her face lifted to the trembling moonlight that slipped between clouds. The water kissed her skin like absolution. Her lips moved in prayer, soft and steady, not to beg, not to weep, but to forgive. She knelt in the garden, hands clasped against her heart, whispering words no one but the night could hear. Beneath her palms, the rain pooled into small rivers, glimmering with reflected light, each droplet carrying a piece of her devotion into the soil, and from the shadows of the broken colonnade. He watched her. The Alpha King, a man once made of pride and thunder himself, stood still beneath the weight of his crown, his cloak dragging through the mud, the storm's fury bending around his silence. His eyes, once sharp as command, softened at the sight of her. He had conquered kingdoms, silenced rebellion, and ruled beneath omens. But nothing had ever silenced him like the sight of her whispering grace into the rain in that moment. He did not see a queen. He saw the peace he had long forgotten how to keep, the deepening mystery. The king who knelt the storm broke above him, wind clawing at his cloak, thunder echoing his own restless heart. Still, he stepped forward, boots sinking into the softened earth. Each step felt heavier, as though the weight of his crown grew with every inch closer to her light. When he reached her, she did not look up. She knew his presence as one knows the approach of rain, not feared, simply expected. He stood for a moment, unsure of what words were worthy of the silence she had made sacred. The rain washed down his face, mingling with the ache in his chest. "I have commanded armies," he said finally, voice low, almost lost in the storm. "But I cannot command your forgiveness." Her prayer did not pause. He sank to his knees before her, the sound of his armor folding into the mud a soft confession. The thunder rolled once more, then faded, as though the sky itself bowed with him. No title remained between them now. No law, no crown, no distance, just a man stripped of everything but his yearning. He looked up. The rain dripped from his lashes. "I have built walls around every wound. I thought pride would keep them from bleeding. But pride has only made me forget how to feel." Her hands, trembling and warm, reached toward him. She cupped his face with gentleness the storm could not touch. "Then feel now," she whispered. Her thumbs brushed the corners of his eyes, wiping away the rain as if it were sorrow. Her breath mingled with his, fragile, human, infinite. The storm's roar dimmed, replaced by the rhythm of two hearts rediscovering their pulse. For the first time in years, he bowed not from duty, but from devotion. The Alpha King, the man of iron and command, bent his head beneath her palms, surrendering every battle but this one. Love, it seemed, was the only war worth losing. See the fade into silence. The moon that crowned them, the storm began to quiet. The clouds parted in slow surrender, revealing the moon, pale, weary, and watching. Its light fell upon them like a benediction. The queen